My name is Jo-1 Trafford. My maiden name, Goran, is French, so there's not a good English translation for the sounds. If you pronounced it in French, and my father was French, it would be Guahan.
Wow, very different.
Yes. So I think what I'd like to do is to talk about my childhood, my father. There's some fabulous stories around my father. I'm going to start with how my parents met. It was in the 1930s. My father's parents are both French. He was born in New York City, so he had dual citizenship. But anyway, as Hitler was marching towards Paris, where my grandmother lived, his mother, she wanted to leave. She wanted to get out of Europe and come to the States. They booked on a steamship. In the meantime, my mother was traveling through Europe with her uncle, very wealthy uncle. Oh. They were also on this steamship.
Oh, so
and
they met at the ship.
Yeah. So my father would be on deck in those lounge chairs, sitting next to his mother, and they would see this young woman and an older man walking back and forth on the deck. And my grandmother said to my father, "You need to go introduce yourself to this young woman." And my father said, "No, I don't think I feel comfortable doing that." They were in their mid-20s, maybe. My grandmother moves into New York City. And I don't know if my father was living with her. She was probably in a place where she had divorced her husband. That's a whole different story. But anyway, one time they got invited to a tea in Long Island. And my grandmother asked my father to accompany her as her plus one. So they go to this tea, very elegant, and who is there but my mother?
Wow, so they did not talk at the boat.
They did not talk at the boat, but they saw each other, they recognized each other, and oh, isn't this lovely? We met on the, saw each other on the boat. Yeah, it's fate. And it was a lovely visit, and that was it. Then one time, I don't know how long after that, my father was driving in New York City, and he was at a stoplight, and he looks at the car next to him.
Oh my God.
And my mother is in that car.
Wow.
And in the space of a red light, they made a date.
Oh.
And that's how they got together.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Isn't it? It's a fabulous story.
Wow.
Whether my mother and him should have ever been together is another story. My mother died when I was in my early 20s.
Wow.
That's another story. But anyway, going on with my father, I always felt like I had a really unusual childhood. My father was French, born in New York City, but he always had that European elegance about him.
He grew up there, right? He grew up in Europe.
He grew up in various places. He grew up partially, I think, in South Africa, where his grandfather was stationed as a member of the military.
Wow.
He grew up partially, he learned his English when they were stationed in London.
Okay, so got British accent.
Right, yeah. No, he actually had just a very refined American accent.
Oh.
So anyway, he had a lot of traveling around. He wasn't really raised by his mother. My grandmother came from a very wealthy industrialist family in France. Her father made a lot of money in the steel industry. She grew up with nurses and nannies and governesses, and she had two sisters. One died quite young, and the other one had a sense of humor. My grandmother didn't. My grandmother, I'm going to jump all over the place. My grandmother and her husband divorced. Then when he was a French diplomat, and when he was stationed in Mexico, my grandmother liked the prestige of being the ambassadoress in Mexico, so she remarried my grandfather.
Oh.
They really hated each other, but that's okay. So when she went out, she had a fur coat that she wore everywhere.
Yeah.
All right, I'll just put these in the middle because I know you're sharing.
Thanks.
Thank you. Here's some extra plates and some knives.
Fabulous. Because she was always cold. Okay. So every time she went to a restaurant, it did not matter where she was seated. She would go, there's a draft. I don't want to sit here. I want to sit someplace else.
Oh.
So we'd have to get up and move every single time.
Really?
One time, at one point, when both of them were still, my grandparents were still alive, they went to a restaurant with my father. And of course, my grandmother said, oh, there's a draft, I got to move. And my grandfather said, I'm not moving.
Oh.
So she and my father found a different table, and my father had to have a little bit here and then run over to his father and have a little bit there and had to run between the two. So anyway, my father was very European in how he saw life and how he saw the world.
Yeah.
If there had been a movie of my life, you remember who Laurence Olivier was? He was a British actor. He did Shakespeare and things like that. You know Sean Connery?
Uh-huh.
If there had been a movie of my life, Sean Connery could have played my father.
Oh, wow.
The James Bond like Sean Connery. So here I had my French father and my mother from the South. She was from North Carolina. Her father was a professor of history at the University of North Carolina. I don't know what her mother did, but her father had committed suicide when she was probably in her maybe early 30s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Depression?
Yeah, and alcoholism. So my mother was really, she had found these cousins of ours who were very wealthy and lived in Long Island. That was the one she had traveled with in Europe.
The uncle, yeah.
And she loved that. She loved that feeling of the wealth and the tea parties and all the sort of trappings of that sort of life in the 1930s and among the wealthy. She came from a family of 4. She had a sister and 2 brothers. Her sister was completely the opposite. My Aunt Betty married twice in the 1930s and 30s and 40s, maybe into the 50s. Both times she married men who were involved in the Communist Party.
Oh, okay.
In New York City.
Okay.
And back in those days, it was really sort of this idea that everyone is equal, that you're all the same in the Communist Party. It didn't have the trappings we have now in how communist governments are run. It was a really idealistic sort of hope for the world. My aunt had short hair and always wore pants. She hated wearing skirts.
Oh,
she
that's
did on
funny.
occasion, but she didn't. My mother loved wearing dresses. She loved dressing
Fancy,
up.
girly.
Yeah, very girly. So anyway, my mother had a little bit of sort of looking into what that life, that elegant life would be like. When she fell in love and married my father in those most romantic terms, they got married, they had my brothers, and he went off to World War II. And he worked as an OSS, it's a secret service, a military secret service in Paris.
Okay.
He was gone for a bunch of years and then came back.
Bunch of years?
Well, it was 2 or 3 years probably.
Okay.
I don't,
So
I don't.
mom just raised up.
And my mother was living in New York with my very young brothers. And when he came back, because he was in the OSS, he went directly from the OSS to the CIA. The CIA was newly formed at the end of World War II.
Wow.
And because he spoke impeccable French
He's
and really has been traveled around the world, he was a perfect candidate for being in the CIA. And suddenly my mother wasn't having elegant teas in Long Island. She had to go to, their first posting was in Turkey. And then it was Tehran, Iran, where I was born. And then Cambodia, and then Belgium. So she was dragged all over the world. She really hated it. She did the best she could. And she did it successfully. She knew how to be the elegant wife of
in those third countries.
In all those countries, but they're third world countries. And back in those days, in the 40s and 50s,
very poor.
Very poor, very rural, rustic. And I remember in Cambodia, we lived in quite a nice house on a corner, and I could walk to my best friend's house, which was probably 2 blocks away. And when I walked there, I would pass these little huts. They had just 3 walls, and there was a cook stove in front. And it was a dirt floor, and people lived there. That's how people lived.
Yeah, the locals.
Now, as a kid, you don't think anything of it. It's just how people live. But I was exposed to a kind of poverty at a very young age. It's given me a very different view on the world. I am, I'm an American. I love my country, but it is not that I'm passionate about it. I'm not one of these patriots who is going to stand up and put my hand over my heart when they sing the national anthem. I think we have a great country, not right now, please God, not right now, but we have a great country in general. We have done a lot. I don't particularly like our foreign policies. And I don't particularly agree with what the CIA was doing in Tehran when I was born. And I found out later, a friend of mine, a guy I met online who became friends, and I had told him about my father, and he found the book All the Shah's Men, and All the Shah's Men talked about what was happening in the 1950s, early 1950s in Tehran, and mentioned my father in the book. And in the mentioning of my father, it was just a half a page. He had said, in all this machinations, the CIA wanted to get rid of a guy named Mossadegh, who was the leader of Tehran, Iran, and replace him with the Shah. And the Shah was friendly to the United States, and you have all that oil, so of course we want somebody who's going to work with us. And my father said to his bosses, if you mess around here, if you start screwing around with the politics in the Mideast, you're going to have hell to pay. It's going to have a really bad outcome. And he was absolutely right. He didn't back down. He was eventually reposted.
Wow.
So I wish I had known the story when my father was alive, because I'm endlessly proud of him for standing up to the Western overtake of the Middle East. England, France, and the United States charged their way, plowed their way through that region, making it into what they envisioned it should be without any consideration of what it is. And that's really tribal land, where the tribes don't particularly like each other. And they have been forced now into being countries where the tribes are combined. And it doesn't really work, but that's another story. So anyway, so I grew up in this sort of crazy house. When I was in my early 20s, my mother had a stroke. And
wow, so she actually survived this kind of poor life.
She did. She
all her mid-age, right?
But she became an alcoholic because of it, and a really serious alcoholic. But a secret serious alcoholic. I was a kid, I was growing up, I didn't really know. I left, I went to a boarding school in my junior year of high school, a place called Simon's Rock, which is in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. And I was there for three years. So I sort of missed the signs, but I was oblivious. I was just oblivious. So anyway, my father retired from the CIA, and then he sort of dubbed around a little bit, didn't know what he wanted to do, decided to do financial something, I don't know what it was. And he went to a school in Switzerland. Now there's another player in this family of mine, and that was my father's mistress. When we were living in Belgium, he met this woman named Mary, who was a liaison between the American government and European businesses. And in the 1960s, which is when she was working there, it was really pretty much unheard that a woman would have a position of that sort of independence and power. But she's very, very bright, very driven, so she was able to handle that. So anyway, they met in Belgium and started having an affair there. And they would take trips with my grandmother, who by this time in her life had learned to hate my mother
Well, and your grandma let that happen.
Yes,
Because-
but my grandmother not only let it happen, she
Yeah.
encouraged it.
Okay.
So my father and Mary and my grandmother would travel through Europe together and have divine old times. And I knew nothing about this. When my mother had her stroke, which is when I found out she was an alcoholic, and the way that I found out was she had been home when she had her stroke. She went from home to the emergency room to a nursing home, and she never came back again. And my father needed his mistress, so he invited Mary to come live with him.
Oh.
And for a long time, they pretended they didn't sleep together. For a long time. It was so stupid. It was just, but anyway.
How many people in that house?
So, I by that time was out of
Yeah,
the
you were
house
out.
because I was, and my sister was
Not
finished
there.
college and doing other things. Pierre and Philip were off someplace doing their Pierre and Philip thing. So it was just my father and Mary. And we were in Gloucester, Massachusetts at the time of my mother's stroke. And after a number of years, my father and Mary decided they really didn't like the winters. Don't blame them. So they were going to move down to Florida. So they moved and found a place for my mother to be. She was paralyzed on her right side and lost 98% of her language.
Wow.
I'm in my 20s.
Yeah.
I go to visit my father in Florida.
Florida.
My mother is in a nursing home 2-3 miles away. And in the condominium complex, that's an 8-story thing, they have all the list of all the names of all the people out in the little lobby. And there's my father, Roger, and Mr. and Mrs. Roger Garan. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Roger Garan is not really who was there. It was Roger Garan plus mistress, and mom is 2-3 miles down the road. So it was a really sort of bizarre, head-turning thing that people in the condominium complex thought that Mary was either my mother or my stepmother. They didn't know that she was not married to my father. They didn't know that my mother was 3 miles away. It was really schizophrenic.
What's your feeling at that time? Like, did you talk to your father? Like, what's going on?
We don't talk in my family. We didn't really talk. I didn't tell him that. I think he knew that Mary caused a lot of stress. So in the family, let me think of a modern person. There's an old-fashioned actress named Joan Crawford.
Okay.
And another one of the same time named Betty Davis. And they were always playing these sort of dark, scary, strong female people. If they had done a story of my life, my father would be Sean Connery, and my Mary would have been one of these two actresses.
Okay.
And I don't know who's that same kind of character now. I don't think I can name one. But anyway, Mary was one of these people who talked endlessly. I've never met anyone who could talk so much. This is how it is. I'm visiting my father and Mary. We're sitting in the little area having lunch. My father's on one side. He's turned sideways so we can look at the view of the inland waterway.
Oh.
Mary is on the other side and I'm at the other end. And Mary is talking. I'm not talking. My father's not talking. Mary is talking so much that she puts her food in the side of her cheek. Keeps talking. I don't know what she was talking about. My father looked like he was falling asleep, and I think he sort of did. And that was his life always.
Oh.
There was another time I came to visit, and they said, "Do you want to do something?" And I said, "Yeah, I've never been to Key West. Let's go to Key West."
It's a little island.
Yeah, the little islands at the end of Florida. So we're getting in the car. They had a gorgeous Cadillac. And my father said, "You can sit in front." And I said, "Oh, no. I've got short legs. Could you put these in boxes, please?"
Absolutely. I'll bring some.
I've got short legs. I'll sit in the back. And he goes, "Oh, no. You sit in the front."
Oh, poor him.
Right. So I sit in the front. Mary's driving. shuts the car door, turns the car on, starts talking.
Wow.
Does not stop for 2 hours. Does not, I mean, nothing.
And you didn't remember anything she talked about?
Oh, God, no. I have probably financial something.
That's so
she was
funny.
really into investments and things like
I
that.
see. Okay.
It wasn't anything interesting. It
Okay,
was,
so she didn't even care about like if someone is listening or
No. no, she was
Okay.
doing her thing. My mother eventually died, and my father eventually married Mary, which was fine. I think she was the love of his life. I think she was the one where his heart was. It wasn't my mother. The fact that Mary was really a bitch, I mean, with a capital B, is...
You're okay to share that? You share
sure.
that?
Yes. Mary is dead.
Okay.
I think her family is dead. She was something else. She was.
Here's some
Thank you.
boxes, and here's the check whenever you're ready. No
Okay,
problem.
thank you.
much. You had a very deep sympathy of your mom.
I did. You know, when somebody is taken from you, she had her stroke when I was in my late teens, maybe 17. And whoever she was after that wasn't my mother anymore. So to say that I was close to my mom is probably not a real accurate depiction. She was a really serious alcoholic. The rest of the story of how I found out was that she had her stroke, and I wanted to get the laundry out of her laundry basket, and I look in her laundry basket, and there's a whole bottle of scotch in there.
Oh.
So she did a lot of hidden drinking, a lot of it, and that said to me, not only is she an alcoholic,
And you don't know when she started, right?
her
Maybe even earlier, right? Even when you were
I think-
very young.
Oh yeah. I think that she stopped being available to me as a mother. I mean, she was in many ways, but I was a very reserved person. I was very sort of self-contained. I didn't particularly talk to my father about anything. I didn't particularly talk to my mother about anything. And I was very much of very awkward.
You're very awkward.
Yeah, I was. When I was a teenager, I was incredibly awkward.
Like, is it you feel you're awkward or people say you're awkward?
I felt awkward. I felt like I didn't belong, which is one of the reasons why I drank. Because when I drank, I belonged. And when I drank, there could be...
Social.
I was social, and there could be, oh yeah, look, Joe was very funny last night.
When did you start drinking? Like high school?
16? Yeah, oh yeah.
Where
High
did you
school.
get that?
Well, it was when I went to boarding school.
Yeah.
It
should be strict, right?
Other girls would get men, because my first year at that school, it was all girls, who they flirted with, I guess, and then they would bring something to drink. It was Boone's Farm apple wine. That stuff is wretched. Oh my God, it's gross. It's like apple juice, but a wine. Ugh.
Mixed together.
Ugh. It was horrible.
Sounds good. It's sweet and
Very sweet.
Yeah.
Very sweet. Well, this is like, how cheap can you go? When Mary died, my father reached out to me as the person that he needed to connect with, because he was terribly lonely. He had lost this woman who was the love of his life. And he just didn't know what to do with himself. He would go out for all his meals. He would eat out.
Wow.
And he was a terrible flirt. He was so elegant, and he was really beautiful. He was a beautiful man. I have a picture I can show you of him. And he could be incredibly charming.
How old was he, like when Mary died?
He was in his 80s.
Oh, his 80s.
He reached out to me a lot more. And once he got these people out of his system, there was a woman who had been the wife of a guy he had worked for in the CIA, worked with in the CIA.
I see.
And she was lovely and sweet and charming, and she loved her men. She had been married 5 times.
Oh my God.
By the time she got to my father.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. They had been connected anyway. Her husband died, and they definitely started dating, and it was lots of whatever.
When his 80s, wow.
Yes, in his 80s, right.
Yeah.
But she was, for having married 5 men, she was very old-fashioned and would not sleep with my father until they were married.
No way.
Right, and she had to.
How come? Oh no.
And she had to wait a year.
Wow, maybe your dad likes it.
So anyway, she was a lovely lady, and the perfect
liked
person.
her.
I liked her a lot. Yes, she adored my father, and that's what he needed. He needed somebody to adore him, and I think he was very taken with her as well. I don't think it was the same passion he had for Mary, but I think it was, and it was a really lovely end of his life for him. They finally did get married.
Oh, they did?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, which was very, very lovely. And then my father died, and she was sort of, my brother Pierre really stepped up and stayed in her life a lot and helped her, and she eventually also had dementia and was in a nursing home and things like that.
And your brother was taking
My brother Pierre and Mary took care of her.
That was nice.
Yeah, it was really beautiful of them, and I have such respect for them doing that, because she was not easy. She was very sweet, but she was stubborn. Oh my God, she was stubborn. And she had this dog. Oh my God. The dog got very old and blind and deaf, and she had a swimming pool, and the dog fell in the pool and couldn't get out. So Mary found it.
Oh
my sister-in-law. She picked up this sort of, looked like rags.
Oh no, that dog.
Yeah, and so they have to take the dead dog to the place to deal with the body, and and Anne, of course, her name was Daddy's third wife was named Anne, was just bereft. She was wailing, and she goes, "Give him to me! I want to hold him in my arms." If they drive in the car.
Oh, thank
Right,
you.
Here's that. I
beautiful,
brought an
thank you.
extra dish for you. Some spoons.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Thank you. My brother's wife said, "No,
No.
the dog is going to go in the trunk of the car, and you can sit in the car if you want."
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh my. Yeah. So she could be very, very stubborn.
Oh.
Isn't it? It's a fabulous story.
Wow.
Whether my mother and him should have ever been together is another story. I found myself. I found myself later in life, and as I have gotten older, I have found myself even more.